Okay, I'm back and um I would like to share a story that I've experienced a couple months ago. Um I have two children already, a 10-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son. So my boyfriend and I decided to have another child. I was on Depo at the time and I got off of Depo. And I kind of been off and on of Depo back and forth since I had my daughter almost 11 years ago. So I got off Depo and I got my period back immediately, like right there. Like it was back. I never went back for another shot. And my period came, average 7 weeks, normal flow or whatever. And 10 days later, I get brown discharge coming out. So it wasn't really coming out. It was more so when I used the bathroom and wipe, it was brown discharge. Excuse me. So I look up. I'm a looker upper type of person. So I look up everything. I looked it up to see what it was, and I came across an article that mentioned implantation bleeding, which is when the fetus attaches itself to the uterus. And some women experience it. This was the first time I've experienced that. I've never experienced that before. And so that's why I didn't really know what it was. So I didn't really pay it any mind until it started getting red. So then that's when I go to the emergency room and they're like, oh, is there a possibility you can be pregnant? You know, normal protocol. So I'm like, well, if I am pregnant, it'll be too early to determine because my period just ended 10 days ago. And so a doctor comes in, she does like an examine, almost like a pap smear type of thing, take a little swab. And she's like, oh, sweetheart, this is blood. This is old blood. Or you're just on your period. And I said, I just had a period like 10 days ago for real. And she's like, well, you just got off of Depo and this is a side effect. Like I've been off and on of Depo for the last 10 years. I know my body and I've never in my 27 years of life ever experienced two periods in a month. So she's like, this is normal. I said, not for me, it's not. Regardless of it being normal for other people that may be off and on the Depo, it's not normal for me. I've never experienced this before. I guess to her it was more so a coincidence. So I get on Depo. Oh, my baby's waking up. There you go. He all knocked out. But I get off of Depo. I'm bleeding. Go to the emergency room. She's telling me I'm bleeding again or whatever. And it's a period. So I'm like, this is not my period. This has to be something. And I bring up the implantation blood, but she just basically disregarded that. And so she's about to go just print up my discharge papers and just send me on my way. And the nurse is like, well, the only other option you have is to get your blood drawn so that they can detect a HGC level in it. And we were already there for hours. My boyfriend was irritated. He was tired of being there. And so I was gonna do it, but I just said whatever. I said forget it. And then they're like, follow up with the women's center in a couple of weeks, take a pregnancy test, this, that, and the third. I'm like, what would be the point of me taking a pregnancy test if she just told me I'm not pregnant and that this is a period and the side effects from the Depo shot? That was kind of me being sarcastic because I was going to do it anyways, but I was going to do it on my own. I'm not about to go make an appointment to go piss in a cup when I could do it at home myself. So I did just that. A couple of weeks later, purchased a pregnancy test, and I worked at Walmart, so I bought one of those little 88-cent ones, and it came out very faint. Like you could barely see it. But if you are as nosy as I am, you will definitely kind of squint your eyes and you'll see that there's two lines. So I do just that. Get him out the little thing. knocked out. If you hear him snoring, forget him. So I did that. It came out kind of faint, but you can still see the 2 lines. And I take a picture of it, and I text my boyfriend, and I text my best friend, and they're super excited or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is that. I kind of just shared it with him, my best friend, and a friend of mine that I work with. And I'm like, I'm going to take another one in a couple weeks just to be sure. I don't want it to be a false positive. So a couple weeks later, I take another one, the same kind. And this time, it was a big, bold blue plus sign. So I'm like, okay. I text another picture to both my friend and my boyfriend. And so I'm like, so it's official. I am. So a whole bunch of things are running through my head. And we're just like, oh my gosh, we're finally pregnant. This, that, and the third or whatever. So I didn't really tell my mother. Didn't really tell anybody else at the time. Because I was still kind of like taking it all in. So I'm at work. This is probably a couple days later. I'm at work and I go to lunch. I worked in a plaza. And across the street from that plaza was Fridays, TGI Fridays. So me and 2 coworkers are there and we're eating. Now it's time to go. And no lie, I get up. And when I get up, I feel like I'm peeing on myself. And it's like a gush of blood came out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was so scared to even try to get up. But our uniforms, like we had to wear black pants. So the good thing about it is either black or beige, like black or like khaki. And thank God I didn't wear khaki pants that day. And it was a lot. So I had to like, I drive, but we walked across the street to the plaza. And I'm walking back across the street to work. And I'm kind of walking kind of funny because it was very uncomfortable. And I'm walking and I go to the bathroom and it's just everywhere, blood everywhere. Go to my store manager and I let her know that I was pregnant or that I am pregnant and that I'm bleeding and I need to leave early, go to the emergency room, see what's going on. So I leave work early, go to the emergency room, and they gave me a pregnancy test. And then I'm like, I'm pregnant. Like, I was just here a couple weeks ago, and you guys told me that I wasn't pregnant, and I knew that it was a possibility that I was, given the fact that I was bleeding 10 days after my actual period. That has never happened before, and your people told me that I wasn't pregnant, that it was my period, when I've never experienced anything like that. Women know their bodies, like hands down. So go there, they do an ultrasound, and I'm upstairs getting my ultrasound done. And the ultrasound technician is not saying anything to me. She's just on the screen, and I'm like, okay, well, is it a possibility you could tell me how far along I am? And she's like, oh, the doctor will have to discuss that with you. So I'm just like, why can't she tell me how far along I am? Whatever, I'll talk to the doctor about it. Go back downstairs to my emergency room or whatever. And the doctor comes in. This guy takes a seat. So I'm looking at him like, why are you sitting down? That, like, do you have to tell me bad news that you took a seat? So, excuse me, he sits down and he tells me on the ultrasound they couldn't see anything. So he said that could be 2 cases, whether I'm too early to detect on the ultrasound, or I could be having the miscarriage and it already is passing through. So I'm like, okay. So basically at that point, he said, if you're having a miscarriage, let it just happen on its own. Let it pass through naturally. And if it's too early to detect it on the ultrasound, just wait a couple weeks and come back or whatever. So I left that day and they drew my blood and my HGC level was like 67. And so he's like, your levels to detect it on an ultrasound, it has to be over 1,500. So I'm just like, okay, well, if it's that, in that case, maybe I am too early to detect it, but I was calculating it sooner, like, well, later, like I was further along than they were trying to tell me. So my HGC level was like 67. And then they're like, come back in 2 days, because it usually doubled in about 48 hours. So I come back 2 days later, and I get my blood drawn again, and then they're like, we'll call you with the results. So they called me by the end of their day, and they told me that my HGC level dropped from 67 to 17. And so I was like, really? And she's like, are you surprised? I said, yeah, because I was hoping that the HGC level went up, not that it was dropping. If it's dropping, then clearly that indicates a miscarriage. So that right there just like messed my whole day up. I believe I was off of work that day because I went to the hospital, but I ended up going to work to share with my manager what was going on. And I was just so over it. Like, I was just so upset. And I go home. They're telling me not to use not to use, I had to use pads and not to use tampons. So I'm like, I don't wear pads. Like, to me, it's so uncomfortable to wear pads and you feel it and it's, you know, you guys know what I mean. So I just hate that feeling. I'd rather use a tampon. But they told me I couldn't use tampons. So I had to purchase pads to use it so that it could all get flushed out. And they're telling me that maybe I should try to like capture one to see what it looks like, and so they could detect what it is. But I wasn't about to bring it to them, like save it and bring it. I tried to detect it myself. So I Googled like images of it to see what it looked like, and it was very similar. So I text my boyfriend. All hopes was gone, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is happening. And that was that. So I had my emotional breakdown. He has his emotional breakdown, and he's just like, we got to try again. And my doctor's like, you should wait at least 3 to 6 menstrual cycles before you try again. You have to irregulate your period before you try again. He did not want to wait 6 menstrual cycles. That's about 6 months. Like, he wasn't having that. So after the miscarriage, I bled. Or you could say after, like during that process, like I bled for 5 weeks straight. To the exact day, like 5 weeks. And then my period stopped. Well, then that miscarriage stopped. And they say that it acts as a period. So I was fertile after having that miscarriage. And when it was over, I got pregnant again immediately. So I'm just like, okay, my period, since that, if they say that acts as a period, I should get my period from, it was kind of hard to kind of calculate when you should get your period, because if they usually say they don't really have time frames for miscarriages. It'll just end when it ends. And because mine took 5 weeks to stop bleeding, I wasn't sure how to calculate when I will be fertile again. But it happened. I guess it just happened at the right time. We got pregnant again. And so I was very scared to get pregnant again, because given the situation that I just got out of, and it was still scary to even think about like losing another child or whatever. And I've never had a miscarriage before. But I don't think he's not a female, so he wouldn't know emotionally or mentally how it can affect us. But it was affecting me. So I'm like, especially because you wait so long to feel your baby move, is like, oh my gosh. Okay, doctor's appointments, but they're so spread out that you have to wait until this day to even get your first appointment. You have to wait till another day to get an ultrasound done, wait till another day to hear a heartbeat. And it's just like, I wish I had all this stuff at home and I could do it myself, so I can always check on my baby to make sure everything is fine. Like, that's the kind of anxiety attacks I was having. But luckily, with the grace of God, I'm pregnant now, and I'm 5 months with the baby girl. Everything is fine. She is healthy, and she will be here in August of this year. So everything is fine, and I just can't wait. I can't wait to just see her little face and her little toes and fingers and her hair and everything. I have ultrasounds, and I think she looks more like me than she does him. I don't know if it's a good thing because I look good. But anyways, yeah, so that was my story. And I just thought I'd share that because I went through a lot of YouTube videos where people share their stories, and mine's, I didn't really hear one similar to mine, but I just wanted to share it as well. So there you go. This is my story time, and hopefully I could think of some more stories that I could share with you as well. But until then, I'll see you guys later.